sometimes when churches think about evangelism and how to share our faith, and that's a big deal, it's important, we can get overwhelmed and wrapped up and sometimes focus on the wrong parts of that. And so what I've seen, sometimes that means we care more about the assignment and sharing the gospel than we do getting to know the person. And so I want to just talk about what it means to get to know people, because for some of us, and I'm included, in fact, a lot of today is going to be learning maybe what not to do that I've found the hard way. But one of the first things that's been helpful is just learning to make new friends is a huge part of, I think, what Jesus wants to do through you. And so we're going to talk about new friendships and healthy friendships and how to have the kind of friendships that I believe Jesus wants you to have. And the way Jesus defines friendships is very different than maybe what you've been taught, which is pretty cool as well. And so that's what I want to talk about. And again, it really has been a journey for me, and that's what I want to share with you, where I've seen kind of how different God wants me to think about relationships in the way I want to. One of my first examples is I have been going for a little while, but I go serve at PHSE Spring Hill campus, the college here in town. And I'm there to be a witness of the gospel, and I help with, it used to be on Thursdays. Last year, Thursday afternoon, there was kind of this Bible study through Cru, Campus Like Crusaders for Christ, this organization. I would go lead this study with them. Now, I would go make time for that because I wanted to reach people that didn't know Jesus. That was part of my agenda. I wanted to meet people that didn't know Jesus so that I'd meet a bunch of people and they would come here, and that somehow non-Christians coming to this building was like my end game. That's what I was trying to do last year. And so I went to this class every Thursday. I was faithful to teaching, and I had a good time. But because I just kind of was a facilitator and I'd show up, it really wasn't on me to invite students in. And so I kind of was a part of a team, but not in charge of it. And so I struggled because it really was just a bunch of Christian kids. And so I said, wait a minute, like I'm doing this so that I'll be around non-Christians, but these are all Christian kids, and maybe this isn't worth my time. Maybe I could be more effective doing other things. And I kind of struggled all last year with, is this what I should be doing, considering what I think evangelism looks like and what I'm doing with my time. Come to find out, around this time last year, one of the girls that was attending, she was an older lady, she had been going to school for a little bit, knew the Lord, brought her Bible every time, and so she was very faithful to coming. Didn't know her as well as I could have. In fact, I don't remember her first name. And she kept coming. She was there every week, and I always knew that she would be there and she'd be part of the discussion. But again, my mind was fixed on a different group of people and not who was in front of me. And again, about last year, this time, I got a call from a stranger who was this girl's dad. And he called to let the members of Cru know that she had passed away, just kind of suddenly out of nowhere, and a young girl, and wasn't sure completely why, but he called to let us know that she always talked about how important Cru was to her during the week. That for her to show up and to be around godly influence and some people that really helped her understand the Bible more, she really, really needed that, and she didn't have that a whole lot. And I just kind of assumed she did, and so for her, that was the highlight of her week. And for me, I was only thinking about who isn't in the room, and I was missing the opportunity that was right in front of me. Because, and that's part of my tension, is sometimes for me, I'm more worried about the people that aren't in the room than the people that are. And so what does it mean to consider friendship? Because again, if you're like me, one of the problems is I have a lot of Christian friends, and so I do want to make more friends that are non-Christians because I think that's going to be part of it. And what I want to kind of talk about for a lot of this month, we've already kind of started talking about for this quarter, is what would it mean to shift our mindset from being a member of a church to being a missionary of the kingdom? What does that look like? Because I think we all have things that God created us to do. It's a little bit different. And so I think there are contexts for each and every one of us in this county to do some special things. And God has things that he wants each and every one of us to do. But for some of us, I think it gets overwhelming, and how could I be a missionary? I'm not qualified. I don't know what that means. I'm not very good at sharing my faith. What does that actually look like? And so the step I want to talk about is just literally that making friends, because I think that is the first step. If you were to get a group of missionaries in this room, they go to different countries and kind of maybe your typical missionary mindset, they're going to be thinking about what kind of people group can I get attached to, and how can I really invest some time and some consistency into a group of people and really know what their needs are and build relationships over time, and over time to see what fruit comes out of the gospel as I build a consistent relationship with people. And so that same principle applies here. It's to say, where can you consistently get plugged into people here that you can open up opportunities to bring the gospel to? Because one of the things I found at the college is that kind of an equation, I guess, is that if if I choose to invest intentionally with a heart to serve equals an opportunity to have a relationship. That opens up that door. If I'm willing to consistently serve somewhere, to give up some of my time during the week and go somewhere to give my time consistently, and if I do that with an open heart to say I'm here to serve other people and I want to be helpful, and that's genuinely my intention, that kind of dynamic opens up opportunity to have relationships. Because, and you've heard this said before, I'm convinced that to speak truth in someone's life, you have to earn permission to be able to get to say that. Because, let's be honest, the gospel in and of itself is very convicting. It's very challenging. And so if you don't know somebody and you bring this world-changing, life-shattering truth to them, sometimes it doesn't go very well. But if you've earned respect to speak into their life and they know that you're there because you genuinely care for them, and you've already earned that respect in their life, when you get to share the deep truths of the world, and things tend to change a little bit. And I've seen that work in my life. And so what does that look like for us to build relationships with people with consistency over a period of time with an attitude to serve? I think in that we can get closer to being people on mission, to being missionaries in Spring Hill. Because that's what I want to pursue. I think biblically that's what Jesus wants you to do. And that's what I want to talk about, because he has some things to say about friendship and why that's so important. But first, I kind of want to tell you a little bit about what I've learned not to do, especially from a Christian pastor who's burdened by the idea of evangelism. When I think about making friends, and something I want you to think about, is I'm an introvert. Which is ironic because I speak in front of people, but I like my time. I need my time by myself. That's kind of how I refuel. And so it's easier for me to just kind of to step back and say, I need my time to refuel, and I can justify that that's what I need all the time. But I'm so thankful for who I'm married to, because she is not, and she wants to be with people all the time. And so every time we go do something with other people, even though I might kind of have to go kicking and screaming at the door to get to that party or that event, I'm grateful that I go, because I'm better when I'm with people, and that's good for me. And so I have to continue to tell myself, man, I'm blessed by the people in my life. Even though I like my time and I need that to refuel, there are some really, really good people in my life, and I need to spend more time with them because they are making me better. And so I have to choose to say, let me just stop thinking about me and being so selfish and what's going on in their life. And that's kind of the first thing that I don't always do very well. Is that if you want to make friends and be successful in that, it's just to think about them more than you think about yourself. Which already can be a struggle for me, because I want to do what I want more times than not. And so if you would begin to think about what do other people in your life need, that also opens up some doors. One of the things I've seen that's really helpful, and Ian Daniels actually does it really, really well, is just be really good about asking questions. If there's some people that you're just getting to know, and for some of you it might be at work, it might be at school, and so you kind of have some common interest, and you can kind of hear they like this game or this movie or this sports team or whatever that kind of common interest is, and you get to talk about stuff, but then to get to ask them, what do they think about it, or how life is going. And again, this is because I've learned what not to do. Because I'm a speaker, I just want to fill the air with what my opinion is and what I think, and that gets old really fast. And so to get to have that time to really hear from somebody else, especially from a Christian perspective, just because I know the truth doesn't mean I have the relational etiquette to just spill everything the second I get someone to pay attention to me. I need to hear their story. And so one of the tips I just want to share with you is, in your attempt to do what Jesus told you to do, this is again what he says he wants us to do, that you would be willing to say, you know what? Like, what are your interests? Where are you coming from? And hear their story. And again, Ian, he's so good at just asking a lot of questions and kind of figuring people out. And he does it in a way where it's really making him better. Like, it's not just doing it to fill the time, but he really cares to know more about people. And I want you to think about, in your friendships, and maybe the new friendships that you need to create, that what it will look like just to ask them more questions about their life. Jesus did this really, really well. And so I want to model that, because if you're like me, I just want to fill the air with what I think. And I want to tell my friends about what I need to talk about. But if you would just take some moments to think about, hey, maybe let me hear your story a little bit, that's going to be super helpful. Another tip, because I've seen that I've done it wrong, is you have to be okay with just being authentic. I've made so many mistakes where, especially when I was first getting to know my wife's family, we were engaged, getting to know her siblings, and so her younger brother, high school kid, I got to know him, and I wanted to have a good impression on him, and I kind of pretended like I was somebody else. Like I was like I was like tough, like I was like a gangster, like it was this really weird persona that I made up because I thought he would like me more. And I thought it was going to help my relationship with him, but he could see right through it, and that only made it worse, and it honestly wasn't good anyway. And I don't know why I was doing that. When I lived in Missouri, I somehow just kind of picked up like the slang a little bit, and my voice started changing, and the more I was with my Midwest friends, my voice started shifting, and I thought, man, like I am changing who I am with the people I'm around. And in some ways that's good. But be careful, because there's enough relationships you have opportunity to have where you're going to want to fake it so that they'll like you, and try to pretend that you're somebody else so that maybe you'll be better friends or that somehow it's going to help. But we can see that. If you're not authentic, that's going to show. And how much more is that true for Christians? God forbid I make a friend with someone with some kind of agenda and I pretend like I've got it all figured out so that they'll like me better and pretend that I'm a certain thing, and for them to only find out that what I'm presenting to them is a lie anyway, because I don't really believe it. So who am I to try and make friends with someone if I'm living a lie when Jesus is only truth, right? I've got to be authentic about it. And I got to tell you from personal example, in my experience here with you guys, I have never thought, I was being too authentic today. That's too much, I've never regretted my openness. And I think in the healthy relationships that Jesus wants you to have, he created you to be authentic. You're better that way. And you guys know there's enough people in our lives that aren't being honest with us. It is refreshing, especially if a Christian would be authentic. And so one of the tips, and again, because I found out the hard way, if I pretend that I'm somebody that I'm not, it usually just makes more work for me, and I'm messing up the relationship and not helping. So as you attempt healthy friendships, as you attempt new friendships, learn from my mistakes and just be yourself. And here's the thing, because if people don't like you for who you are, that's okay, because the only one that matters, his opinion of you, is that he loves you very much. And so be honest with who you are, because that will help a lot in your relationships. And at the end of the day, you just got to relax, because I get so concerned about the timing of things and how consistent I am and how that kind of works. And I want new relationships to kind of go the way that I want them to. Again, as a Christian, there's the tension for me, because if I'm not careful, I have an agenda where I say, you don't know Jesus, I want you to know Jesus, then I want you to be at church on Sunday, as if this is all that Jesus had in mind. And it isn't. And it's unfair for me to put that on another person. Because what Jesus wants to do is he wants to use me as part of that person's story. Jesus doesn't promise me that if I share my faith with someone, I get to see their whole story happen in front of me. That's his to enjoy. Some of us, we're gonna plant the seed. Some of us, we're gonna get the harvest. It's your job to be faithfully consistent to the people God put in your life, because you don't always get to see it. And I've told some stories, and I'll kind of tell one briefly. I met a server at Carrabba's like 10, 12 years ago. Amazing person. She was like a head server, Amber. I love this girl to death. And we got to know each other a little bit. But life kind of moved on. She knew I was in ministry. And so she kind of was watching me all the time. She had a different relationship. She was a lesbian and just kind of thought she couldn't be with Jesus. And so I'll never forget this. She came up to me. She said, Jake, I know you're like connected to the big guy. So would you pray for me? Because he doesn't listen to me. And I just thought, and this is in the middle of me taking an order. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like that, I wish we could have. But the moment left. And so, I'm thinking, okay, I want to go back to that. I want to do all this relationship stuff like in a shift on a Friday at Carrabba's, and that's not how it works. And the cool thing is that was many, many years ago. And at a friend's wedding here recently, a couple months ago, she was connected to this family, a Christian family, at the wedding, a part of what they were doing, just to kind of as someone to come celebrate with them. And so this girl, Amber, over the course of 15 or so years, has got people all along the way kind of continuing to invest in her story. Now, her story's not over yet. I don't know if she knows Jesus. She's watched us on Facebook Live before. She knows about Go Church. And so I'm seeing the story kind of continue, and I wish I get to see all of it, but we're not always promised that. There are people that you will invest your time into. And don't think you have to have an agenda to say, well, you need to get your life figured out with Jesus or else I'm not going to be your friend, because that's not how it works. You're supposed to be a friend because Jesus is a friend to you, and that's what I want to talk about. Because there are great tips and things that I've done right and things that I've done wrong, and I just kind of wanted to give you some application first about what making friends has looked like for me, and in some ways to do it, some ways not to. But I'm most excited to get to the reason why, the context of why this is important. Because you guys all have opportunities, and if there's a reason why this is important to me, why I think this will be important to you, it's what Jesus showed us. And here's the text I want to get into. This is out of John chapter 15, and Jesus shows us what friendship, in my opinion, looks like. Jesus says, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that to lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command, and I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I have learned from the Father I have made known to you." John 15, 12 through 15. You can leave that up there for a little bit. And so Jesus talks about friend a lot in this, kind of more than a lot of other places. And so there's a couple things about this that I want you to think about, and why that will motivate you and how that can help you in regards to making friends. First of all, Jesus kind of brings up this point that you're not a servant anymore, you're a friend. And that's a big deal. He's elevating where you're at. Even though Jesus knows who you really are, right? He doesn't want you to stay in this old position of underneath something and that you are not good enough, that he wants to bring you up to a different level. That Jesus wants to be your friend. And so that's kind of a big deal, because he wants you to be a friend, because he tells you the plans of the Father. That I'm not going to make you a servant anymore. A servant doesn't know the master's business. And so he wants you to know the master's business. That's kind of a big deal. Jesus calling you a friend, letting you know the master's business, is kind of specific, because he just tells you what it is that what it really is, what real love is that a friend lays down his life for another. And so the master's business is sacrifice, is love. And so Jesus is saying, listen, you're not less than. I'm going to call you into my inner circle. You're going to be my friend, and I want you to know my plans. Because I can trust you with them. And not just trust you with them, but I want you to consider what it looks like for you. Because my plans are the greatest love, and that greatest love is to lay down my life for my friends. And so this is the example he has for us. And so you should be a good friend. You should make new friends. You should have healthy friendships, because Jesus did that for you first. He came for you with that great love and sacrifice to say, hey, you're worth it to me. You're worth elevating from servant, from sinner, from nothing, to friend of God, and the ability to take the kingdom to great places. He wants you to understand that he sees you in a very special way, and wants you to know the plans that he has to change the world. And that's a big deal, because, again, I get lost in that early kind of part of my story as even the sermon started, that I worry about the people that aren't in the room and the people that didn't come to the club on Thursdays. And I get so wrapped up in numbers and how successful we think we are. When Jesus says, no, that's not my plan. My plan is for you to sacrifice like I did for other people. One of the greatest ways you can be the greatest friend is through loving people in sacrifice. And you know how you and I know that's true already? What is the primary key to making a marriage work? Sacrificing and loving the other person as best you can. One of the best ways to be a best friend you possibly can be is to love and serve other people faithfully. One of the tips I've seen in being a father and being a minister and every relationship I have, if I choose to serve them first, that always makes it better. In ministry, if I choose to make this about making me better, then we're never going to win. It's about serving other people. If I try and parent my kids and make it all about them making me feel better about myself, it's never going to work. If I pour my life into my kids, into this ministry, into my marriage, into what God has in front of me, it seems like he knows that it's going to work better anyway. So the key tip I want to share with you about friendship as we start this series off is that Jesus says, if you do the way I do, then it's going to be better for you. Because I'm going to cue you into the plans that I have to change the world. And the way I'm going to do it is not by how many friends you have, but by the ones that you do have, that you would invest and serve and love those people as best as you possibly can. And why? Because I did that for you first. Because that's the way I want you to love other people. And so ask yourself, in the friendships that you have right now, if you want to have healthier friendships, some of them maybe aren't so healthy right now. Well, how much am I serving and loving those people? How am I being like Jesus to them? And that should be a good kind of tip to help you better your relationships. And this is my favorite, if you're going to pursue new relationships, if you're going to understand, like I'm trying to process, that I want to be a missionary in Spring Hill, that I want to share my faith, I want to be an evangelist, all those things that Jesus talks about me doing. If I'm going to do it through friendship, one of the best ways I can do that is I can just serve and be good and be kind and be selfless to other people. This is the strategy Jesus has for you. And so if you're going to make new friends, I would challenge you to think about how can you serve them? How can you ask them questions about where they're coming from? Get to know what makes them tick and what they think about, what they struggle with. And that gives you opportunity to tell you, listen, I know a guy. You might be struggling with this, but here's how Jesus can fix that in your life. Or you get to hear their interests and what they do and how Jesus has changed your life. And there's so many more ways, and we're going to continue to spend this month talking about friendship and how you can have better ones and you can have new ones, and Jesus will change that. Because if he has a blueprint for us to be good friends, I don't want to miss that. And I want to give you a story too. This is a little bit longer, but I just want you to remember, if you're going to have better friendships, if you're going to have new ones, think about the way Jesus has been a friend to you. This story, this is just kind of a cool kind of indicator of how I see Jesus being a friend, and maybe this would encourage you. So listen as I tell this story here real quick. This story, it comes out of John Ortberg's book, The Life You Always Wanted. Pretty cool story. So this state-run convalescent hospital is not a pleasant place. It is large, it's understaffed, and overfilled with senile and helpless and lonely people who are all waiting to die. On the brightest of days, it seems dark inside, and it smells of sickness and stale urine. I went into one once or twice a week for 4 years, but never wanted to go there and always left with a sense of relief. It's not the kind of place one gets used to. On a particular day, I was walking in a hallway that I had visited before, looking in vain for a few others that were alive enough to even receive a flower that I had brought to want to give, and a few words of encouragement. The hallway seemed to contain some of the worst cases, people strapped to their carts and in wheelchairs and looking completely helpless. As I neared the end of the hallway, I saw an old woman strapped in a wheelchair. Her face was an absolute horror. The empty stare and the white pupils of her eyes told me that she was blind. The hearing aid over one ear told me that she was almost deaf. On one side of her face had been eaten by cancer, and there was a discolored and running sore covering part of one cheek. That had pushed her nose to one side and dropped one of her eyes, distorted her jaw so that so what should have been the corner of her mouth was actually the bottom of her mouth. As a consequence, she drooled constantly. I was told later that when new nurses arrived, the supervisor would send them to feed this woman, thinking that if they could stand the sight of her, they could stand anything in the building. I learned that later this woman was 89 years old, and that she had never, 89 years old, and that she had been here bedridden, blind, nearly deaf, and alone for over 25 years. And her name was Mabel. I don't know why I spoke to her, but she looked less likely to respond than most of the people I saw in the hallway. But I put a flower in her hand and said, "Here, this flower is for you. Happy Mother's Day." She held the flower up to her face and tried to smell it, and then she spoke. As much to my surprise, her words, although somewhat garbled because of her deformity, were obviously producing from a clear mind. She said, "Thank you. It is lovely. But can I give it to someone else? I can't see, and I'm blind." And I said, "Of course." And I pushed her in a wheelchair back down the hallway to a place where I thought I could find some alert patients. I found one and stopped the chair. Mabel held out the flower and said, "Here, this is from Jesus." That was when it began to dawn on me that this was no ordinary human being. Later, I wheeled her back to her room and learned more about her history and her story. And she had grown up on a small farm. She had managed it with only her mother until her mother died, and she ran the farm alone until 1950, when her blindness and sickness sent her to this convalescent hospital. For 25 years, she got weaker and sicker, with constant headaches, backaches, and stomach aches, and then the cancer came too. But she had the 3 roommates who were all human vegetables who screamed occasionally but never really talked. And they often soiled their bedclothes, and because the hospital was understaffed, especially on Sunday when I usually visited, the stench was often overpowering. Mabel and I became friends over the next few weeks, and I went to see her once or twice a week for the next couple of years. Her first words to me were usually an offer for some hard candy that she had from a tissue box near her bed. Some days I would read to her from the Bible, and often when I would pause and she would continue reciting the passage from memory, word for word. On days that I would take a book of hymn and sing to her, she would know all the words of the old songs. For Mabel, these were not just merely exercises in memory. She would often stop in mid-hymn and make a brief comment about lyrics, and she considered particularly relevant to her own situation. I never heard her speak of loneliness or pain except in the stress she placed on certain lines in certain hymns. It was not many weeks later I turned from a sense of I had been helpful to a sense of wonder. And I would go to her with a pen and paper to write down the things that she would say. During one hectic week of my final exams, I was frustrated because my mind seemed to be pulled in 10 different directions, and at once, with all the things that I had to think about, the question occurred to me, what does Mabel have to think about? Hour after hour, week after week, not ever able to know if it's day or night. So I went to her and asked, I said, Mabel, what do you think about when you lay here all the time? And she said, well, I think about Jesus. I sat there and thought for a moment about the difficulty for me of thinking about Jesus for even 5 minutes. And I asked, what do you think about Jesus? She replied slowly and deliberately as I wrote, I think about how good he's been to me. He's been awfully good to me in my life. I'm one of those people who's mostly satisfied. Lots of folks wouldn't care much for what I think. Lots of folks would think I'm kind of old-fashioned, but I don't care. I'd rather have Jesus. He's all the world to me. She said, Jesus is my friend. And this true story just kind of helps me remember that sometimes you don't know that Jesus is all you need until Jesus is all you've got. And if he's that kind of friend to her, if he's the kind of savior he's been to you, then how much more do you have opportunity in your life? And so I want you to be a good friend. I've got some tips about things I've learned and things that I don't quite know, but all of that just doesn't really matter compared to if he did that for me, how could I not do everything I can for those that don't know yet? So you should be a good friend to other people. And not because I'm telling you, not because I want more people to attend on Sunday morning, but because Jesus was a good friend to you first. And he cued you in on the plans of the king, and he said, listen, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to sacrifice. And greatest love is when you pour your life out for other people. So do that. So do that. And I needed to hear it because I worry about all the stuff that doesn't always matter. But he has been so good to me. And I want to continue to do what he has us to do. And he's called you into this world for such a purpose, for such a time as this. And I don't know what all the relationships in your life look like and what that step is for you, but I just want to make it very clear and challenge you that if he loved you that much and continues to love you the way that he does, how could you not be the best friend you could possibly be to all the people in your life that you have opportunity to be? People at work, people that live in your house, people down the street, your neighbors, whatever that might look like, but you have been called out to be a missionary in this county, to be a good friend to people in your life, and to make new ones. And I hope that as you consider that, you would do it with Jesus in mind. Let me pray for you, and we'll get back to it. Father God, I love you very, very much. I'm so grateful for your patience with me, your love for me, your grace that you poured out freely that I don't deserve. Thank you for your patience and your friendship to me. Your willingness to know all of my hurt and all of my brokenness, and yet you still put up with it and push me forward to the best version I can be. I pray that every person in this room would know what it means to be close to you. That's where it starts. That we don't do this because we have to. We do this because you loved us first. I pray that everyone would be motivated by your love to change the world. And if they don't know that love, that they would have a moment to just talk with you. And let you speak the words of love that you continue to pour into this world over and over and over again, because there's no better joy than you in our life. I love you, Father. Give us the ways to pour that love out into other people, because I want everyone to know how good it feels to be connected to you. You're the best thing that ever happened to us, Father. We love you. Help us to go out and make new friends and keep you in mind and serve people like you served us. I love you, God. I thank you so much for this day, and it's an honor to do life with you and these great people, Father. We love you. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Amen. All right, guys. Well, listen, no closing songs, so you guys are dismissed. If you have any questions, you can kind of grab one of us in the back. Again, Rick's doing a study, so that's cool if you're with someone here for the class. Other than that, it shouldn't be raining right now, so it'll be all right. But enjoy your week. God bless you guys, and we'll catch you next weekend.